Hey coach, surprise! It's a bonus episode. Woo woo! This episode is a recording of a live that I did on Instagram for our physical fitness business. So essentially for our potential clients and our current clients. And I wanted to share it with you for a few reasons. One of the biggest mistakes that I see coaches make when it comes to their marketing is not speaking your client's language. How I talk with you about what we do as financial coaches is not the same as how I talk with my potential clients. They're both me, of course, but it's so important to identify the lingo you and me and our peers in the personal finance space use, and how that oftentimes is not the same as what our prospects are using every day. After 25 episodes of this podcast, you've probably gotten used to what I sound like, so I thought it would be a good time to share something just a little different. The second reason I wanted to share this is because it is not perfect. I have never created a piece of content that I consider perfect. Never. I always think of something I wish I would have said differently, or something I left off by accident, or maybe a place where I feel I elaborated for way too long. This example is no different. So I wanted you to know, done is better than perfect. Your people are not consuming your content as critically as you are creating it. If you are hesitating because you're overthinking or being a perfectionist, I wanted to show you how perfectly imperfect your content can be and still be really valuable and impactful. Finally, social media these days is all about punchy content. And if that's your style, more power to you. I'm actually a little bit envious. My personal style is more long-form content, longer lives just like this one, or a longer blog post or long-form emails. I actually say all the time that I'm not trendy, and I don't really care to be trendy. If you can create bite-sized content right out the gate and you enjoy it, go that route for sure. But if you're like me and long-form content is more your style, lean into that. From this longer video, we'll turn it into 1-minute shorts and we'll pull quotes from it for images on social media. In other words, I have learned to embrace my creative process and stick with what works for me, and I simply wanted to encourage you to do the same. So coach, I hope you enjoy this content. You may not agree with exactly what I'm saying in it, the financial strategies that I'm sharing, or it may not be precisely what you believe or what your ideal client even needs to hear from you. Or maybe it totally is. Either way, I hope you gain some really valuable insights by listening. Before I let you go to enjoy this bonus episode, I did want to make sure you knew about something happening this weekend. If you are on our email list or in our community of financial coaches on Facebook, Financial Coaches Unite, then you may already know about this, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned it here on the pod too. If you've been following me or the Financial Coach Academy for a while, then you know we offer one, maybe two deals each year. We rarely discount any of our offerings. For my physical fitness business earlier this year, we changed the name of our very first coaching session from Eureka Session, which it had been for over 10 years, to titled Power Planning Session. And when we did that, we wanted to get a whole bunch of people booking the new session as quickly as possible because we wanted new testimonials that actually referenced a power planning session and not what they all were referencing, which was Eureka Session. So when that happened, we offered $200 off for, I want to say it was like 1 week long. And that is the only time in 10 years I have ever discounted my coaching prices in my physical fitness business. Offering discounts is simply not a pricing strategy that I personally like using. So all of that is to say that we are running a promotion over Memorial Day weekend. So if you've been considering investing in the financial coaching toolkit, this is the weekend to do it. The toolkit is all of your client-facing coaching concepts that you may need. If you've been wondering how you coach on particular topics and not just teach, but coach on these financial topics, the toolkit is for you. We have removed all of the guesswork, all the learning curve, all the trial and error, and we give you step by step by step exactly how we introduce a concept, the exact questions we ask, the handout we use, the action steps we have the client take in between coaching sessions, the roadblocks they sometimes experience and how we coach them through those. We provide the templates to create so you can create your own handouts. and even the most common responses from clients, so you are even more prepared and confident for your future coaching sessions. There is even a 90-day plug-and-play financial coaching program that you can start enrolling clients in right away as well. And you could enroll just one client into this 90-day financial coaching program and make your investment back. And over Memorial Day weekend, we are offering 20% off any of our toolkits. Depending on the focus area you're looking to invest in, they range from $497 to $1,997. And they are all 20% off with code 20% off. That code is 20% off. It is 20 and then written out percent off. So 20 PERCENTOFF, 20% off. You can go to financialcoachacademy.com, click on Learn, and then choose the toolkit. Or you can go direct to financialcoachingtoolkit.com anytime from May 26th through May 29th, essentially Friday through Monday, and enter in code 20% off to get 20% off the financial coaching toolkit. And again, that's 20 PERCENTOFF, 20% off. With that, if you are one of our coaches and listeners from outside the United States, Memorial Day is a federal holiday that falls on the last Monday in May here in the States. The day is used to not only recognize the sacrifices of our brave military personnel, but it's also when we honor and mourn the military personnel who have died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. It is a holiday where we are all united in recognizing the sacrifices made by our armed services. To the loved ones we have lost, you are forever in our hearts and minds. Your service and sacrifice will never be forgotten.
I'm ahead of the game.
Hi, I'm Kelsa Dickey, the CEO of the Financial Coach Academy and my financial coaching business, Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. My coaching journey began more than a decade ago with me helping people for free from my dining room table. What was once a little business of mine has grown into a 7-figure company that employs a team of people. My goal is simple: to help you fall more and more in love with financial coaching. I believe financial coaching is the most rewarding way to make a living. If you are an aspiring financial coach or have been coaching for years, I'm here to help you create a business you love that gets your clients massive results. Let's get to it.
Hey, oh gosh, I have thought about going live all week. All week I've thought about doing a live to talk about feeling financially anxious, and I just kept overthinking it. I kept thinking about like exactly what do I want to say and what's most important and what am I trying to portray and all of that. And even just sitting here right now, I sort of sat here for a minute with the title, getting ready to go, just waiting to hit the live button for probably a good 10 minutes, just thinking about like what exactly, do I feel like I need people to know right now and what's most important and, what's weighing on me and that kind of thing. And so I decided to just go live and we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about feeling financially anxious. And I thought first, maybe like this unique position that I'm in as a financial coach, we sort of have a glimpse into a lot of people's finances all at one time. We have hundreds of clients' budgets right at our fingertips at all times. We have conversations weekly or monthly with all of our clients. And so there's so many conversations that we have that really helps us to sort of get a sense of things. And I think it's like a sort of a micro, little section of the world that we have. And yet it tends to give us a glimpse into how people feel about money. And so there's just been so much conversations that I've been having specifically in the last month that I think are really, really important around how people are feeling about money right now, sort of the state of things, expenses, all sorts of really important things. And, if you were to go to my website and see my bio, it'll tell you about, my education and my degrees and yada, yada, that kind of stuff. And I've studied finance and economics and accounting, and I love all that stuff. I love geeking out on that kind of stuff. And I don't even think that is like the most important part of what I do, to be honest. I feel like one thing that I've always been able to do really well, and it serves me really well in times like this, is I don't start with sort of the financial strategies. I'm always able to sort of get a sense of how people feel and what they're thinking and sort of what's going on with them first. And then I look at, so let's get into the financial strategy part of like how we can fix that, right? And it's that, that part of it that I really want to talk about first, okay? And then I'm going to share some financial strategies because I do think they're important. I want to give you some like really practical takeaways. But really what I am sensing is a lot of financial anxiety right now. And it shows up in a lot of different ways. And so I want to talk about that because you may be sensing something, some things may be weighing on you. You may have some worry going on or some hesitations and that kind of thing. And it may also be more extreme than that for you. Like you might really be feeling squeezed financially. And either way, it's all a form of financial anxiety. And I think it's important that we talk about it. I think it's important that you know that if you're feeling it, you're not alone, that we are definitely seeing patterns in the conversations that we're having with our clients. So I would say the first thing that people tend to sort of sense is that there's a lot of things that they're hearing. There's a lot of input sometimes, but they're not sure what to do with it, right? So it's sort of like they're aware of it, but in a very vague way, if that makes sense, like not a very precise, practical way. So like you might know, like, man, gas prices are killing me kind of thought, right? Your rent may have gone up recently. You might be like, oh, they're talking about the debt ceiling, and like, a lot of our clients, when we ask them, like, are you hearing these things? What do you think about that? The response that we hear is like, I mean, I hear it, but I don't really know what it means, but it sounds scary, right? Like it sounds bad. I don't really know what it means for me. I don't know how that affects me and that kind of thing. So what happens is you hear these things that don't sound overly optimistic, but you're not really sure if they mean anything for you or not. And so it's just this like surface level, like, kind of feeling is usually how it starts, okay? Then the next thing that we typically see for folks is this feeling of like, all right, I gotta like pay a little closer attention here. Like, okay, let me just see, like, ooh, man, I'm starting to feel the squeeze. That's the squeeze, right? Where it's like, ooh, things are getting a little tight. I have no doubt that people are experiencing this. This is the insight we have on people's budgets. Again, I cannot stress this enough, is like really helpful because we have clients all over the country and we can see their budgets, and for all income levels, married, not married, business owners, not business owners, like literally just like so many different types of folks, which is so cool. I love that. And we can see their expenses. We can see averages across all of them, right? And again, it's like a minor population of things, right? It's like our own little like test study, if you will, where we can sort of pay attention to patterns. And so we can see expenses going up, groceries, gas, rent, interest rates, right? Like all of these types of things, we are seeing it straight across the board going up for everybody, okay? So it's like at first people can sort of absorb it temporarily. And then when you start to notice that it's like month after month, paycheck after paycheck, like that kind of stuff can really start to, it starts to get heavier and heavier, right? The squeeze starts to get tighter and tighter. And that's really when people will typically like start to be like, okay, I've really got to pay attention. Unfortunately, what does sometimes happen for people, which is why I want us talking about this, is they if you aren't sort of aware of your numbers, which most people aren't, so it's okay if you're not, you may be internalizing this. Like you might be like, I need to watch my spending better. I need to do better financially, or I'm bad with money and that kind of thing. When if the majority of your expenses go up in a short period of time, there's only so much you can do to make different decisions, right? And then across the board, it's just that so many of your expenses have gone up, but chances your wages or income have not gone up at the same rate. And so you could be internalizing it if you're not careful, which is again why I want us talking about it. Now, the next thing that tends to happen, I will say that when when you're on a plan with your money, which the good news is that, of course, most of our clients are, it's like the thing we do first, right? So in the very first month when we meet with somebody, that's like step one is like, we've got to figure out where your money is going, get on a plan, make sure we're managing just the everyday stuff really, really well. But that's typically just the first step, right? Like we get that done in the first month, bada bang, and like, there you go, sort of thing, right? And then the idea is that we want to move on to other things, which is like pulling on other levers to like really amplify your wealth and like optimize your money, right? But first we have to start with sort of like knowing where is your money going. And the benefit of that tends to be that in times like this, when there is a lot of uncertainty around us, or a lot of changes, a lot of unknowns, a lot of like we're hearing things and expenses are going up and that kind of thing, typically a client who has a plan with their money doesn't have to react to that as quickly as somebody who has no plan in place with their money. You sort of are able to see it more clearly, so it helps you to sort of know what to manage, right? So that is a benefit. So if you sort of aren't looking at your money, your income and expenses yet, that is definitely the first step. And I'm going to give you some other practical steps in just a second. But the reason you want to do that is because it helps you to see when something changes, is it a big deal to you or is it not a big deal to you? And that's going to be a different answer for everybody, right? So like gas prices going up may be a really big deal to somebody who A, has a really tight budget, or two, drives a ton, right? Like if you've got an hour commute to work every day and your kids are involved in like travel sports, and so every weekend you're traveling and that kind of thing, and you know, you have a spouse who drives a big truck or something like that might be a much bigger deal to you than if you work from home, sort of live in like a 5-mile bubble, like I sometimes feel like I do, you know, everything that we go to is like within 5 miles and that kind of thing. Then you know, it's less of a big deal to you. The reality though is that you want to know whether these changes are a big deal to you or not, because just because they're a big deal to somebody else doesn't mean they are a big deal to you. You may not be a cause of anxiety or worry for you. You just don't know. The other thing that then tends to happen, okay, so where people go next is financial hesitancy. There's a lot of like, let me just be a little bit more cautious. Let me just wait before I pull the trigger on that. And we see this even with our clients who have a rock solid plan in place. So let's say a client is saving to either buy a new car or book a vacation, buy a house, you know, that kind of thing. And we've had that plan in place. They've been working the plan and they hit a milestone and they're like, okay, now I'm ready. This, you know, financially speaking, we hit the point that we wanted to hit when we said we were going to make the decision. Like, we're going to pull the trigger. Like, this is literally what we've been waiting for. That time comes and the client will say something like, okay, but let me just double check things first. Oh, let me just wait. Like, is there anything else? Are you sure? And it's like, oh, I don't know. Like, things feel uncertain around us. And so even though like you could maybe pull the trigger or maybe financially you're okay, like you're not feeling strapped or the squeeze or whatever, it's sort of like all this messaging around us and the fluctuations that happen somewhat quickly that we don't feel like we have control over makes it so then we then hesitate, right? We feel as if we need to be like more cautious. Like the decision that we were going to make, that we planned for, we had a strategy around all of that, now feels more risky than it did when that initial plan was created, right? So the level of risk increases when there's more uncertainty or we have some anxiety around money and we can't really always put our finger on like where that anxiety is coming from, right? Then the other sort of response that happens, if you're not careful, is financial avoidance. And this happens, I completely understand this one. Like I understand all of these responses. I really, really do. I can understand why any of these would like be a person's reaction. It is really hard to consistently engage with your money and look at it and all that kind of thing when everything feels uncertain. So you're looking at it and you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. I don't know what's going to change next week, or you know, what these things that people say mean for me, like the interest rates growing up, possibly the debt ceiling, is there a recession, like these types of things. Like most people don't know practically what that means for them. And so it's really hard to look at your finances because you don't even know what you're looking at. You're kind of like, well, what does it matter? And like, I don't know what levers to pull and I don't really know how to make decisions. So why even bother looking at it, right? the more financial anxiety we feel, the more stress, the more worry we feel, or sort of like the more doomsday it starts to become for us, the easier it is to want to avoid looking at it. And that tends to be sort of, as you can imagine, the absolute opposite thing that you should do, right? So, the idea is like continuously look at it, not because you have to solve it all in that 5-minute session where you're looking at your expenses and that kind of thing, but maybe you find one thing that you can do, right? And I'm going to give you a few things in just a second. But for me, the financial anxiety comes from, one, seeing these patterns, seeing these conversations, noticing the types of reactions people are having to everyday decisions around money and commitments they either are making or not making because of that. I think back to when Michael and I first got married, and we lived a very, very tight budget. We had credit card debt. We had a lot of student loan debt. We absolutely lived paycheck to paycheck, if not over some months. And I think about the last few months specifically with, prices going up and that sort of thing. And just, again, it's not just the like tangible, this expense category is increasing, food, gas, yes, that is part of it. It's that, and the conversations and the messagings that is like constantly around us is really negative right now. It's really toxic. It's sort of perpetuating feelings of anxiousness and worry and overwhelm and like that kind of thing. And again, I don't always think people realize it, which is why I wanted to talk about it. But I imagine if this had happened to us years ago, when that's what our financial position was, just how stressed I would have been and how anxious. And one of the worst things that can happen when you start to feel that way is either you check out, you don't want to look at it, that kind of thing, or that stress and anxiety affects your energy. And our energy, whether it's going towards problem solving or, picking up an extra shift at work to drive income, or, cutting our own lawn, like those types of things, is very important during times of uncertainty. So that is why stress can be so negative when it comes to money stress, is because the roller coaster ride that it sort of creates, as far as like, then we don't even feel like doing anything about it, right? We feel sort of stuck. We feel like the squeeze keeps happening more and more, and we're not putting ourselves in a position to do something about it because now we're exhausted, right? So I wanted to give you 5 things. One, I just wanted to talk with you about it and let you know that if that's how you're feeling, we are certainly sensing this with our clients right now. And again, our clients have a plan in place for their money. They're doing okay. It's not like that all of a sudden something is wrong, but they are sensing this. They are feeling it. And if our hundreds of clients in different states, different careers, different industries, that kind of thing, are feeling it, then I have no doubt many of you are too. And I think sort of brushing under the rug, it's like, let's call out the elephant in the room. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure you're aware that this is normal right now. This is not you, and because you are bad with money that you feel this way, right? It's not your financial position. It is simply the sort of the state of energy around us, around talks of money and just expenses and that kind of thing. So there's a whole lot of reasons that I could go into for it. I won't. I was making a comment to a girlfriend the other day, and I made a comment about like how I was listening to my favorite economist, and he said blah blah blah, and she goes, "You have a favorite economist?" And I was like, "Yeah, doesn't everybody have a favorite economist?" And she goes, "No, Kelsey, you are my favorite economist." And I was like, "Oh, okay, good." So I totally get that, like, you maybe don't care about all of the details around why this sort of is happening and why we are feeling the squeeze. I would say that most of us, myself, my coaches, our clients, are considered ordinary people, right? I mean, we have some clients who make over $1 million a year. That is still not considered like the ultra rich or ultra wealthy, right? We have clients who make $50,000 a year. We have some clients who are small business owners that just launched a business like in the past year. So they're sort of like just getting it off the ground, right? We have clients with a lot of debt, and we have some clients with no debt at all. We have some clients with, really healthy amounts in savings, and some with like not $1 in savings, and that's a goal that they have. And they are all feeling an element of financial anxiety right now. Like, it's really common right now. Like, we are just sensing it. It's there. It's like palpable for us because, again, it's like we talk about money for a living. We look at budgets, hundreds of them across the country for a living, which again is just such a unique position, right? We're not only seeing the exact financial drivers, like these expenses in particular going up across the board and that kind of thing, but we're sensing the emotion behind it, how it's affecting the way people feel, how it's affecting what you think about yourself and your business and your income potential, or your ability to manage your money, your ability to handle shit, like that kind of stuff. We totally get that, and I want you to know that, like, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay if you're feeling that way, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are wrong or bad. Okay. So here's 5 things. I wrote down 5 things that you can do to, I always feel like action helps me, right? Like, I feel like I'm at least doing something. I'm not just sitting with the problem. I'm not just sitting there. I'm sort of like, and it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. And I also like to sort of be like, okay, let me work on a solution. Let me go into solution mode, right? So here are some solutions for you. Number 1, I call this the negotiables plan. You may not be in a position right now where you have to start cutting expenses, or you have to start trimming things, or like it may not be that for you right now. And what I would love for you to do is just take a look and pick 3 to 5 things that you're like, those are negotiable to me. If I have to, those are the things I'm cutting. And especially important if you have a significant other. So if you share finances with another person, I absolutely want you to do this conversation now, even if you don't have to. Even if you don't have to cut anything, this is when you have this conversation. Because when you have to cut things, if that time comes, and I hope that it doesn't, if that time comes, the way you feel now is going to be even more amplified, right? Any feelings of worry, stress, anxiety you have now will be even greater then. That is not a good place to make decisions from, right? You want to make the decision now before those feelings are amplified. So if you could come up with 3 to 5 things where you're like, you know what, I would cut these 3 things if I had to, if I absolutely needed to, right? And get on the same page with your spouse. That way, when that time comes, it's as simple as sort of pulling the trigger on that. Michael and I have had, I remember the very first time we ever started hiring a housekeeper to come to the house, and she at the time came once a month. And I remember, like, it was glorious. I was like, oh my God, and then the housekeeper started coming twice a month, right? And now our housekeeper comes once a week. And that's totally what happens, by the way, for a lot of our clients too. But Michael and I have always talked. We've always said, like, we feel so blessed and so privileged that, like, for 4 hours on a Saturday or Sunday, I don't have to spend time cleaning my house and cleaning the kids' bathtub and mopping the floors and that kind of thing, because we have this. And I am so grateful that we can have that. And it is a negotiable expense. If we were ever in a position where something had to go, that is one of those things, right? Now, sometimes I joke that it is not negotiable, but I joke, right? Like it is totally negotiable. So the idea is you want to know what those things are. That way you are ready to go if you have to, okay? And hopefully you don't have to, but it's all about preparation, okay? And especially important if you share finance with somebody, get on the same page about that now, because you don't want to be having that conversation when emotions are really charged later. It can sort of create even more tension, and the communication can break down and that sort of thing just because of stress. Figure that out now. Make a list. This is your negotiable plan, right? So what 3 to 5 things are negotiable that if you had to, you could cut them. Number 2, this is your freelance plan. Really, this is the other side of the equation. So there's 2 sides of the equation, income and expenses. We just talked about expenses. This is the other side of that, which is your income. Think about ways that you can drive your income. Now, that may be through a career of some sort. So like if you are hourly and you can pick up overtime shifts, great. Not everybody has that option. If you're salary, you may not have that option, right? Now's a good time to update your resume from a career perspective. But another thought about this is looking for ways to diversify your income. A lot of people, when we start talking about this, I'm a huge fan of having a side hustle if you work full time. I'm a huge fan of actually owning your business if you just want that to be your primary source of income. There are so many benefits. The studies show it's not just a financial gain. Oftentimes, there's tax benefits galore typically, but your happiness, your level of fulfillment, your creativity feels more fulfilled in life by pursuing something like this. Now is a really good time to start thinking about that. Like, what could you do? What is a need you see that you are in a position to fulfill? Is it providing a service? Is it providing a product? Is there something that you have a skill in that you could leverage? And this doesn't have to be overly complicated. You don't have to come up with like a fancy logo and a website. And like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about maybe you post in like your community Facebook group sometimes. You're like, hey, this is what I do. If anyone needs help with it, let me know. These are my rates, right? Like, it can be as simple as that, but you want to start thinking about that now if you don't already have it. This is, again, one of those preparation plans where you can start playing around with it. Like, what could I do? What would that look like? How would I charge? Like, those types of things, so that you could start going down that path if you need to later. You could also just do it like every once in a while, start dabbling in it. That way, if you do need to lean into that income source later, if something happens with your job or your career or something like that, and there's that potential, unfortunately, right now, right? Like, there are some talks about what's coming, and I always say, if you talk to 10 accountants, you will get 11 answers. And that is because accounting very much is like an art form in some way. I think so many people assume that accounting is like black and white, that like the IRS says this is how you do it, and this, you can't do anything else. And there are some areas of the tax code that sure are that strict, but there's a lot left for interpretation. And depending on the accountant you ask, are they more aggressive? Are they more conservative? That kind of thing, you'll get a different answer. So I always say, like, ask 10 accountants a question, you're going to get 11 different answers. The same is sort of true for economists. Ask 10 economists what's going on, and you're going to get 11 different answers. So where accounting is like an art form, economists, it's sort of like reading tea leaves, if you will, right? Like, it's sort of like a bit of a guess for everybody. Like, nobody actually knows is the reality. So, you hear some economists saying these scary projections, and maybe they're right. I hope they're wrong, right? There's a whole bunch of economists not painting those scary pictures either. And so, those mixed signals can also be really confusing. And like, so should I be worried or should I not be worried, right? And the idea is, with having a side hustle, having a business, it is something you can control, right? That is one of the reasons I love having people have some sort of side hustle, even if they have a great job and they love their job. It can just be a lever you can pull. It's just one more level that we can use to optimize your position at any given time that we need to. Okay, so that is the next thing that I want you to think about, is like your freelance plan. Is what's something you could provide, a good or a service, that a skill you already have that you could just make a little bit of money doing. Okay, that is where I want you to start, is just sort of thinking about that. The third thing is a debt plan. Now is a great time to look at shifting any high interest debt to lower interest debt. So if you've got high interest credit card, moving it to a 0% credit card, even if that 0% credit card is, for 12 months or something like that's going to save you 12 months of interest, this is a really good move to make. You will hear some financial experts that will say things like, don't refinance your debt. Like, that's not a smart strategy and you shouldn't do that. And the thought process behind that, oftentimes, or the argument behind it, I do understand that the argument behind it is that if you feel the pain of paying interest, that will motivate you to take action. I personally believe that you decide that. You decide when you are ready to take action. And it doesn't always have to be because the problem has gotten bad enough that you feel the pain of it. You can decide right now that you are not going to be the person who waits to hit rock bottom or a problem to get so bad that the interest is so painful that that's what motivates you to finally do something about it. You could decide right now that that is not who you are. That's not how you make decisions, right? And so I feel like that argument, while I do understand it in some capacity, I also think it doesn't give people enough credit, and it sort of makes people not realize that they actually have a choice. Right now, when we are going into times of uncertainty and people are feeling a squeeze and there's feelings of financial anxiety, sort of all around us, if you are an empathetic person, even if you are fine financially, you may be picking up on the financial anxiety that people are feeling, the worry. Just so you know, I'm an empathic person, so like I pick up on this stuff. You may be feeling it too. What I want you to do is look at ways of refinancing your current credit cards specifically to something that is 0%. Now's a good time to do that. During times of recession, it can be a lot harder to get approved for different sources of debt and that kind of thing. So this is something you can do now. It will probably give you a little bit of a cushion, right? So depending on what interest you're paying and how big your balances are and that kind of thing, even if you can't refinance all of it, it is still a really good move to make right now. I don't get the argument of like pay lots of interest just because you need to feel the pain of that. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily true for most people. So you can refinance your debt, save some money in the process, and decide to take even greater, further, stronger actions right afterwards. And it will actually free up maybe some cash that allows you to gain some momentum in another area, okay? So that's your debt plan. So look at your debt and make sure that you are doing the best with it. I'm not like, hey, if you can pay it all off, pay it off. But like, if that's not an option, and I would say, let me back up on that. I do not want the advice to be right now that if you have money in savings and you have debt, you should take everything out of savings and pay off your debt right now. That is not a general piece of advice I would give anybody. That is something that like I would want to look. There's so many factors that go into that. It's not a black and white decision for sure. So it's like, how stable is your career? What is your income? What are your income sources? Like, what are your expenses? How much discretionary cash do you have every single month in your budget? Do you already have a tight budget? Like, what other types of savings could you tap into if you wipe out your savings? There are so many factors there. You could be thinking you're making a good move by taking everything out of savings and paying off your debt, but actually creating a higher risk position for yourself should something go wrong or there's a whammy or you lose your job or something like that. And so I would never advise that for somebody without actually sitting down and like having a conversation and looking at your financial position. But you can refinance your debt so that you're not paying as much interest in the meantime. There's also a happy medium there where it's like, do you have one credit card with a higher interest that you could take money out of savings and pay it off and it would still leave some money in savings, and you've got some other debt that's maybe smaller interest or that kind of thing? So you've got a lot of options. It's not just like keep everything in savings and keep all of your debt, or wipe out all of your debt and wipe out your savings, right? Like there is sort of a bunch of options in between those two as well. But I do want you to look at your debt right now, okay? And just see if there's anything you can do to optimize it a little bit better. Number 4 is having a focus plan. This is, I talked briefly about this a second ago, where it's like, the idea here is I want you to commit to staying connected to your money right now. In times of uncertainty, when there's a lot of things unknown, when it feels like we don't have control over the changes that are happening to us and our money, right? So expenses are going up, we don't have control over those, all those sorts of things. If you are commission-based, so let's say you have a sales position, you may also experience a change in your comp plan. They may, change your commission structure. You may have a harder time selling the thing you sell because of the state of things, right? Like if we are sensing financial anxiety, so are employers, so are companies, that sort of thing. I don't think they're feeling it as much, but that's a whole other conversation. And so sales may go down depending on if you're like a B2B or if you sell to consumers or if you sell to other businesses and that kind of thing. So that may also, just be something to be aware of. And when all of these changes are happening, It is so easy to just be like, throw our hands up and be like, oh, it's frustrating. I don't care. Like, I don't want to look at it. And that is the worst thing that you can do. So what I would love for you to do is create a focus plan. Are you going to look at your numbers once a week? I look at mine every Friday morning. It is literally what I do. It takes me like 5 to 10 minutes. It is a very fast thing. I've shared this before. I make like flavored coffee on Friday morning. So like, it's just like a little treat. Like I drink my flavored coffee while I'm sort of like playing with my numbers in the morning before the kids get up. So it is literally just what I do. So maybe it's every Friday, maybe it's Sunday mornings, maybe it's Monday nights, whatever the case may be. Pick a day each week to just for 5 or 10 minutes. This does not have to be an hour-long budget ceremony, right? Like just 5 to 10 minutes, look at your expenses, see what you got going on, see like, hey, what can I do? Is there any lever I could pull right now? Let me just take inventory, right? It's not even always about making changes. It's about awareness. Awareness, you cannot make changes if you don't have awareness. Awareness is always, always, always first. So what you don't want to do is not pay attention for like 3 months and then decide I've got to do something. But first, before you know what to do and can make any changes, you then have to like go down the rabbit hole of like, what am I even looking at? Like, what am I working with here? I got to like actually wrap my brain around 3 months of expenses. If you just look every single week, and again, just scan, here's kind of what I got going on. Here's my income. Here's my expenses. Here's kind of what my spending's been. Here's what my debt is looking like. Here's how much I got in savings. That's it. Just do that every single week for a while. The awareness is what you are shooting for. That way, when the time comes, if it comes, that you have to make some quick decisions, you don't have to do that step first, okay? Last but not least, get control of your money. We call this your power plan. If you need help with that type of step, like what am I looking at, or I just can't look at it, it stresses me out too much, or I pull it up and I don't really know how to look at it, or what's most important, or how to diversify my income, or what kinds of expenses I should be looking at, or here's my debt, what do I do with it? How do I optimize it? How do I make it so it's not costing me a lot of money right now, even if I'm not going to focus on paying it off, or that kind of thing. If you need help with that kind of stuff, please reach out to us. That is what we do. Do not accept your financial anxiety or worry or stress, whatever you are feeling right now, as sort of like just what you have to deal with, okay? There is something to be said about knowing that you have a handle on things, right? And the power that comes from that. It's not to say you won't ever worry, but it's minimal in comparison, because it's like, I'm worrying, let me go see, let me go look, let me go see which levers I can pull. You have the confidence from an action perspective. Like you're sort of like, I know what I got to do. And if you are missing that, that is quite literally what we help with, okay? And I do think sometimes there's this thought, we are really proud of the fact that like our clients' net worth increases so much from one year to the next. And sometimes those numbers, when we share them, we try not to share a lot of numbers around like our clients have an average debt of $37,000. Okay. So when they first come to us, the average amount of debt is $37,000. That's not mortgage debt. It's like consumer debt. And the average net worth of our clients goes up about $190,000 a year. We share those numbers, and then sort of what happens is people anchor themselves to them. And so what I mean by that is, if let's say I tell you that our client has an average of, $37,000 in debt when they first come to us, and you're like, well, I have 65, so I am way like in trouble. She can't help me, sort of thing. And then another person will say, well, we've only got $1,000 in debt, so like, we can just do this on our own, or we'll be fine, or our problem's not big enough for her to help with, right? Another thing that, I know sometimes happens is this idea of like, their clients, their net worth goes up like $190,000 a year. Like their clients must all be wealthy. And they are now. They are after they start working with us. But not when they come to us, you know what I mean? Like that is the point of this, right? Like that when they come to us, most of our clients have no idea what they're doing with their money. They have no idea where they stand. This happens all the time where like our clients, and if you are a client listening to this, like I hope you will like just kind of like leave a little laugh emoji if this was you. Like we'll kind of get them on a plan, and they will literally have a debt that they completely forgot about. Like, oh my God, I actually have this other credit card that I pay every month and I totally forgot to tell you about it. Like, it happens all the time. And it's little things like that like when people come to us, like it can be a hot mess. Like, that's literally, we love it. We absolutely love it. Like, that is literally like, let me get my hands in there. You know what I mean? Let me unravel all this stuff. Like, that is what I do. That's the way my brain works, right? So just know that it doesn't matter what your income is. It doesn't matter if those numbers intimidate you or if they feel totally normal to you or whatever the case may be. If you are feeling financially anxious right now, and again, all of our clients are, and they have plans in place with their money. So I imagine if somebody does not have a plan in place with their money, it's even more heightened than what our clients are experiencing right now, right? If that is how you are feeling, just know that it is not all on you. It is not something you are doing or not doing, and acknowledge it first, gain awareness of what you're working with, and then pull any of these 5 levers that I just told you about. Okay, so pull, let's see, they were the negotiables plan, right? So what are your expenses that are negotiable? Your freelance plan, what is a way that you can diversify or drive your income? Your debt plan, how can you get your debt to be a little bit more efficient and for the time being, even if it's temporary? Your focus plan, how are you going to commit time and energy to looking and gaining that awareness and maintaining that awareness of your finances consistently right now, despite feeling anxious, despite the uncertainty? And then number 5, make sure you've got a good power plan, that financial power plan. And if you need help with that, that's what we do. Just let us know. I hope this was helpful for you. I am sensing this financial anxiety, and I just wanted to talk about it. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Slide into my DMs, and let's talk about what you got going on. Okay, bye. Well, there you go, Coach. What do you think? See what I mean by it being perfectly imperfect? I'm curious what differences you noticed in how I speak to you as a fellow financial coach compared to how I communicate with our potential clients on the financial coaching side of my business. Let me know in the comments what your biggest takeaways were. I believe financial coaching is the best and most rewarding way to make a living. I truly love what I do. If you are ready to learn and see how becoming a profitable and successful financial coach can be for you, check us out at financialcoachacademy.com to learn more about our online courses, our free trainings, and all of our events. As always, I would love to hear from you too. If you have any questions for the FCA podcast, please submit them at financialcoachacademy.com/podcast. And if you loved this episode, please subscribe and leave me a rating on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to me. I will see you next week, Coach.